Hi everyone, my name is Ercy and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to give you my thoughts on To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. If that's something you want to see, then stick around. I read this back in July, and this was the only book I wound up reading in July, so I have a lot of thoughts. It was pretty big. It's a very chunky book. But I'm going to break this video down into different categories. So I'm going to talk about why I picked up the book, what the book's about, how the book fits into the genre, what I liked, what I disliked, and my rating, and who do I recommend this book for. If you are watching this video, I would love some feedback on this kind of format for this review. Just let me know what you think about it if you make it all the way to the end. Also, just a side note, I wound up straightening my hair, so if I look different, that's what it is. I just felt like it. And I wanted to experiment with the lighting in this video, so I put on my contacts, but I'm having a hard time seeing my screen. So I also don't have my glasses, so who dis? But anyways, yeah, let's just get on to the book. So why did I pick up this book? This big old monster is Christopher Paolini's latest book, and it was published towards the end of 2020. He is the same author of the Inheritance Cycle, so, you know, Ercy, you know, those books, which is 4 YA books and a short story collection, but they're all in that world. This is Christopher Paolini's first attempt at making an adult book, and I love when I see authors doing that, where they kind of evolve and progress with their writing. Christopher Paolini, when he wrote the Inheritance Cycle, he was pretty young. It shows that he wants to age and progress with his audience, and he's evolving as a writer, and I wanted to give this a chance. I was also really motivated to read this book because my husband listened to the audiobook version of this book, and he said that he really enjoyed this book. He had a lot of fun with this book. He didn't think it was like revolutionary or anything, but he really liked it. He had a good time, and he was excited for me to read this so that way he and I can talk about it and talk about everything that happens in this book, because there's a lot that goes down. So I wound up buying it at my local Barnes & Nobles, and let's just take a moment to appreciate this cover, because this is another reason why I bought this book, because this cover is gorgeous. We have the blue against the black, and we have Kira falling through the stars or through the galaxy, and I just think it's so striking and bold and gorgeous. And even like the spine, I'll hold it up this way so you can sort of see it. Even the spine, when you have it in your bookshelves, I just think it's so beautiful. This is just, I mean, it's his name, but you know, it's okay. I just think it's such a pretty book. I don't try to judge a book by its cover, but there's just something about a really nice cover that just makes you appreciate it a little more, you know? So the hardcover version of this book is 878 pages long. 825 of those pages is the actual story, and there's a 53-page addendum in the back of this book that includes like 2 articles about some of the science in this world, fictional articles about the science in this world, a glossary of terms, a timeline, and of course his acknowledgments. So after all of that, what is the book about? So the book starts off in the year 2257. Intergalactic space travel is possible at this point, and we have spread the human race across the stars. We begin with Kira Navarez, and she is a xenobiologist, so she pretty much studies alien technology, or alien life, I should say. She's on a survey mission at an uncolonized planet, so her and her team, they're part of a group that is sent by certain human colonies over to different planets to see if they're able to be habitable for another colony, or another human colony. But while she's on this planet, she winds up finding this alien relic, and she gets really excited because, you know, we're in the future. If you discover some sort of alien technology, you can be very famous. It's sort of like winning the Nobel Prize, right? So she's very excited until it moves, and things sort of happen from there. It winds up triggering this intergalactic space warfare, and Kira has to sort of form a team to try to help stop this war, because she sort of feels responsible for activating this alien technology So she has to work with her team to try to help save the human race from total annihilation. But what makes this sci-fi? I like talking about how a book fits into a certain genre. So obviously this is sci-fi. He branched out from doing fantasy into sci-fi. And obviously you can look at what Google has to say in terms of what genre a book fits into. And I just thought it'd be fun to dive a little deeper. So science fiction is one of those genres that encompasses a lot, which is one of the reasons why I really like reading sci-fi books. According to my little glossary of literary terms, science fiction is a type of narrative fiction that is grounded in scientific or pseudoscientific concepts or realities, right? And those concepts can be set on Earth or some kind of parallel world. So this book specifically is pretty easy to kind of be like, okay, obviously it's sci-fi. We also have a lot of science fiction tropes throughout this whole thing. I would say, looking into this further, this is a mix between a space opera and a space western because we're exploring different frontiers in the universe. As far as the science fiction tropes that are throughout this, we have first contact with alien species, we have interplanetary warfare, galactic space travel and exploration, speculative technology, and super intelligent robots and computers. So now that I got all of that out of the way, let's talk about what I liked about this book. Definitely world building, no. Galaxy building, no. Universe building is definitely prominent throughout this book. Christopher Paolini, like I said, is very descriptive. He does a really good job, in my opinion, of giving you this really big picture and describing this whole world. And I feel like that was very ambitious with this book, being that we are talking about space stations, spaceships. We're talking about different planets, different structures on these different planets. You know, the technology from different species of people or things, right? I felt like he did a really good job in world building and painting a picture of what it is that we're seeing in this future. I also loved how he was able to handle first contact, not once, but like a few times within this book. I thought that was really cool. Even the way that he was able to talk about how these different species communicate with one another or to people was really interesting to me. And he drew a lot of inspiration for one of the species from the ocean. And I feel like that was really cool because there's so many mysteries in the ocean that it can feel like an alien world. And I think that was really interesting that he was able to kind of adapt that into this alien race. I love the philosophical discussions that he had interwoven throughout the narrative. Paolini did this in Aragon as well throughout the inheritance cycle, where there were these quiet moments where the characters are just in conversation with one another and they're talking about the nature of humanity, loneliness, grief, sanity. I thought that these conversations were so beautifully handled throughout this book, especially those conversations on the impact of loneliness. I thought that that was done really well, especially with the characters like Grigorovich and Kira. There were just so many moments of contemplation throughout the book, and I really loved every single one of them. Like whenever he hit those moments, I found myself really paying attention and wanting to be in that conversation with the characters. Speaking of Grigorovich, he was my favorite character. He is a ship mind. So this is sort of human solution to their failure to develop a successful AI technology. So what they do is they take a human brain, probably like a person that was involved in an accident or something, and obviously they have to have their consent, and they take the brain out of the body and they modify and expand it, and it sort of becomes this super brain that they put into ships that help oversee the ships and the functions of everything that goes on these spaceships. And I thought that the character of Grigorovich was really interesting because he has his own past and it impacts the way that he is able to function on this ship. And her conversations with him were really interesting and I loved them. Paolini writes in the glossary, I'm just going to read what it says. Ship minds are some of the most brilliant individuals humanity has produced, also in cases some of the most disturbed. So even though he doesn't have a physical body, he's still a person, just amped up because of the modifications that were done to him. And I really thought it was so cool to read about his character. Moving on, I also really like the action scenes throughout this book. I thought they were just so much fun. They were all super fast paced because of the integration of the technology of the future. I thought it was pretty cool. But my only quip with that is that maybe with some of the alien technology, I kind of wish that it would have been a not so human based in terms of how they did their weapons, but I'll get to that later. Also, the character development. I felt like I really loved the character development throughout this book. Obviously, there's a lot of space in this big old book to grow these characters. The majority of the characters in the beginning of the book are not the same towards the end. They are all changed because of the events of this book, and I thought that was really well done. But let's talk about what I didn't like about this book. Number one, the pacing. So I know the book is literally called To Sleep in a Sea of Stars, but I didn't feel like I needed to know about every time that they went to sleep. So there were these periods of action and then these periods of rest because they're traveling, and I felt like I was there through every step of the way. I just didn't like it so much while I'm going through those slower periods. Aside from those philosophical conversations, there were just these periods of where everyone's just kind of slowing down, and I felt myself slowing down with the book. It's probably another reason why it took me so long to read this, because those moments where there's action, I was flying through those pages, reading it up, they were a lot of fun. And then those periods where it's really slow, I felt myself dragging with the book too. And that was really hard to get through. But now that it's over, now that I've read through the book, I appreciate those moments for what they were, because they make sense for character development, growth, moving the story along, getting to know the characters, right? But it was just really hard to, as you're going through it. I also felt like there were some unnecessary scenes that I didn't feel like were necessary. So I'll give you one example, because obviously this does nothing to spoil the book. It does nothing for the story. It was just a moment of something cool that probably the author thought of, and he wanted to throw it in there, and all it did was add 2 pages to the story. So there was this one moment where Captain Falcone is about to lose his ship, is drifting off, and he's like, "No, my ship!" Right? And everyone's like, "Oh my God, let's give him a moment, let's give him a moment. He's having, he lost his ship. We got to figure out what else we got to do." And then he's like, "Aha, if I'm looking at my ship with my lenses in my eyes, my ship can come back to me." And the ship comes back, and then, that was cool that he was able to do that. But it was unnecessary, because that was never mentioned again. We didn't talk about it anymore. Maybe in the future books we will, but it was just an extra 2 pages for me. You know what I mean? This is already a big book, and I felt like that was just one of a couple of examples of something unnecessary that was put into this book. But despite those dislikes, there was a lot more that I liked than I disliked. I really did enjoy this book. Even though the pacing felt off for me, I still had a lot of fun while reading this. And like I said earlier, I appreciate those quieter moments because they do a lot more for those characters. It's just, you just got to be prepared to go through it. But the action was a lot of fun, the world building, the attention to detail. I thought it was really, really cool in this book. As far as my ratings go, I gave this a 4.5 on the Storygraph and 4 stars on Goodreads, because I still loved this book. It was a really good book. I had fun with this. I'm excited to see how the story will continue, because this is the first in the Fractalverse universe, and I'm excited to see where it goes. So who should read this book? If you like slower paced books with a lot of world building, this is the book for you. You're going to get some good action throughout the book, but if you just want a book that's fast paced throughout the whole thing, this is not for you. The pacing is just off. But that's my review of this book. All of my thoughts on To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. Let me know in the comments if you've read this book, and let me know what you thought of this book. I know there's a lot of mixed reviews online, and if you didn't like the book, that's okay. I'd be interested to know why, but Like I used to tell my students, if you've got an opinion, make sure you back it up, right? This whole video is me backing up my opinions on this book. Let me know what you thought of the book. If you are interested in reading the book, let me know. I would love to talk about this book with you because I enjoyed it. But give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you want to see more. I hope you guys have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.